everybody. Michelle DeAmber here. I'm here with Josephine Zanetti, and we are going to discuss lifestyle and rest this week. Hi, Josephine.
Hi, Michelle. How are you today?
Good. Is it warming up where you're at?
Yes, it is. Finally
Good.
getting some nice sunshine. You know, Canada's like that. When people in the United States, they say, oh, you live up north. They're not kidding. It doesn't matter where you are. It could be Vancouver. It could be all the way down to Nova Scotia. It's a cold country. You know, of course, it's not as cold as the Netherlands in some parts like Norway, but you know what? Close to these countries. Yeah. So nice seeing you. I'm looking forward to this.
You too. So we're going to go through some things and just kind of discuss, ways that you can kind of start slowing. We talked about adrenal burnout last week, and we're just going to kind of go through some things that can help you start to slow down and rest, because it's not easy to do that from a fast-paced life to slowing down.
That's for sure. That's probably the most difficult thing to do, is to slow down and just like putting your 2 feet on the desk and just learning how to rest.
Yes.
It's not easy to learn how to rest.
No, it isn't. It took
But
me.
you know, people like, I mean, there was something about with Walt Disney with Snow White, you know, and here she is sleeping the whole time. And I mean, she never aged or anything, but you know what? It's so true. When my father was 85 and he fell from the roof, and I came and visited him after so many years, not seeing him, and he was in the hospital, and he rested for so long in the hospital for a few months. He was in a place where you rehabilitation. I mean, he had no more wrinkles. I swear to God, his wrinkles all left. And he had no stress. He didn't have to think about the lawn. He didn't have to think about the garbage and things that he needed to do around the house. Even though at 85, he was very, very active. I mean, you think it would have killed him falling. And it's by the grace of God that he survived. But it's like rest is amazing what it does inside of us and outside of us, right? Yep. Stress is amazing what it does. It's a killer, really is.
Yeah. So we're going to go through some things that'll kind of help slow you down and disconnect to slowly over time get to a place where you feel more peaceful and relax the nervous system that's been, it's like you're addicted to the constant movement and type A and being productive, but then you let go of those things, and then the body is still kind of like jerking and in this stressful state. So it does take some time. Don't think it's going to happen overnight. And we're going to just kind of go through things that are going to help, navigate you through that. One of them is a healthy diet. It is super important. When I was in my 20s, I ate a lot of sugar. My diet was poor. Josephine and I can relate. Growing up Italian, I mean, all you eat is pasta and bread. I think we had pasta like 5 times a week. Yes. Well, that's glue in the intestinal tract. It is horrible diet. Italy may be a little different. They have healthier food. There's some variety, different lifestyle. However, being American or even Josephine, it's just not good. It's not good. So diet, and it affects your moods, your sleep, and physical. So a lot of health conditions and mental, emotional conditions are because of diet.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It actually comes and get us, it's like with the sugar and unbelievable. Even, as kids, if we had too many fruits, it was the same thing. I can see why on a program, not having fruits for a little while helps as well, especially for people who are diabetic, who start a program without fruits, because it's not just the NB program that tells you not to have fruits. There are other doctors actually that I did research on. But of course, once in a while, it's fine. But the once in a while, it's a bit like the blue chips. We'd like to think we can eat 2 or 3 of them, but we're always with the bag on our laps, because we all have a little bit of an addictive. It's like we said before, previously in other YouTube, disciplining ourselves is not the easiest thing, right?
Yeah, and then just check in why we go to certain things, how am I feeling? Am I feeling, I use the term HALT. You learn that in 12-step programs. Am I hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? And if we can halt and ask ourselves those questions, sometimes we're doing certain things that are not good for us because we're feeling one of those things.
Oh, yes, absolutely. So true. I love when you bring up the 12 steps too.
Yeah.
It's been a while for me. It's the best thing. Anybody that's listening to this and they're having issues and they want to be accountable, whatever it is, whether it's your weight, whether you're a sugar addict, 12 steps is a place to be accountable. You go sit there every week. You don't want to repeat yourself that you slipped again. So you become good and it's like, that's the way it is.
And it's a good fellowship because it's with people who are struggling with the same thing. And some people think it's just for alcoholics or whatever, but like I went, AlAnon, there's other, addiction is somehow affecting all people in one way or another. And so the 12-step program is pretty awesome. I kind of refer back to things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have the meetings anymore as they had before, let's say 30 years ago or even 20 years ago. And now with what happened in the last 2 years, people do everything online, but online is never the same as face-to-face. It's a bit like confession, confession is the same thing when you go before a priest, by the way, and go and talk about the things that you've done that isn't good for you. It's the same thing. You don't want to go back to the same priest and repeat yourself. I did this again and I did that again and this and that. So what you do is you become a better person out of it, because shame is not good to have, because there's a lot of toxic shame, especially when you come from a background that was very critical and of the children, and stuff. But there is some healthy shame in certain things. I think there is healthy shame in certain things in this world. And so with the lifestyle, diet is definitely very, very important, and it's a way to discipline ourselves too, to learn self-control.
Yeah. And part of that diet, going into drinking good spring water, I noticed that some people drink purified water, and they probably do that because it's a flatter, smoother taste. But what happens is they take all the minerals out. So it's really good to have spring water, and you don't want to do distilled water because that removes the minerals. Now, if you're on a program in which you're detoxing and you're having really bad detox symptoms, you may want to drink it to kind of slow things down. But drinking it regularly, some health food groups think that that's good, and it's not.
Oh my God.
Plenty of spring water, limit caffeine because it's like a diuretic, and it also it's bad on the adrenals. And then alcohol's got sugar. It's hard on the adrenals. And as you get cleaner, trust me, you don't want the alcohol.
No, absolutely. Even half a glass I have a friend, of course, she's Italian. She has half a bottle of wine every night. I would consider that an alcoholic at that point. And she needs it because she wouldn't sleep at night. She's in her 70s. She's used to it. But she's a diabetic. Amazing. Of course, she's on medication, metformin, But you just talked about distilled water. And I have a friend, now he passed away, was in his early 70s, but he went to the hospital because he also on YouTube, this was a lawyer and, very smart, but he was taking his information from the websites of different health gurus. And there are many that says to drink distilled water. He ended up in emergency because of his kidney failures. okay, too much of, and he continued in the hospital. Finally, the doctors did tell him there are doctors sometimes that tell the truth, so, and they told him that it was not a good idea to drink that distilled water, no matter what he has read, because it was really affecting him. He actually ended up eventually getting cancer out of this, and he passed away. But he had gone on a fast with this
Yeah.
thing, right?
Oh gosh. Yeah, so you're not putting any minerals in, and then you're leaching them out with the distilled water. I can't think of anything that would lead to malnourishment.
That's right. Deadly. That's a deadly combination. So for people, like you said, it is necessary only sometimes or at times, but really rarely.
Right. Exactly. Absolutely. So, healthy diet, plenty of spring water, and then sleep. This is probably should be at the top of the list, quite honestly, yes. Because if we get enough good sleep, we don't make poor choices. I noticed that I made poor choices because I was tired. So I was tired, so you go towards the sugar. Then you get stressed, and then you go out and have happy hour with your friends, and we just make a lot worse choices when we're not getting proper sleep. So I would put that to the top of the list. Now, how do you do that? Well, then you got to do these other things. You got to eat healthy, drink water, stay away from the alcohol. They all go together. And that takes time too. Sleep hygiene. A TV in the bedroom? No, that's just not good. That's just
no, that doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's not good. You shouldn't have electronics in the room. I'm not good with that, so I'm not going to try and pretend that I don't have electronics in my room. My phone is in there, but people who are very sensitive to EMFs really should remove all their electronics, maybe even shut off their Wi-Fi. I keep my lights dim. I just have one light, and it's very light at night, so that I don't have too much bright lights and stimulation. Probably 3 hours before I go to bed.
That's good, Michelle.
Yeah. And then I also stretch. I get on the floor and I do a lot of stretching, especially because I sit all day. And I just want to make sure that, everything's all smoothed out. I use a foam roller and I just get everything stretched out and smooth, and it makes a world of difference. It gets the blood flowing. I'm on the floor playing with my dog, so that's another good thing. These are all kind of relaxation stuff to get to a point that you can go to sleep properly.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Actually, you're right, because the number one healer is rest and it's sleep. So if when we go to bed and we only sleep for a few hours and then we wake up, and then time to get up at 6 o'clock, if you're able to make up the time that you've lost by waking up, that's a different story. So let's say you wake up in the middle of the night, you can't go back to sleep. It takes you a couple of hours before you go back to sleep. That's okay, because if you're able to stay in bed for another 2 hours and sleep till, let's say, 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock, that's okay. But also going to bed early is important. And the reason it's very important is because of the adrenaline glands and the liver. Okay, yeah. So one of the reasons that we end up in going to bed, the hormones, the human growth hormones, is produced during certain hours, okay? And they occur most before midnight. So this is why, like, going to bed as early as conveniently as possible, 9 o'clock is best. Now summer's coming, so it makes it difficult.
It's hard, yeah.
It's very, very hard. And also trying, like Dr. Eck would talk about that a lot. Also, like trying to get up after 7 o'clock is best, because the adrenalines are less active at that point. Okay, so you may feel tired at first, because at 5 o'clock, I'm probably able to get up like at 5 o'clock, no problem.
5 a.m.?
Oh yeah, 5 a.m. in the morning, I'm able to do that. But what I've started for the last few years, conditioning myself to stay in bed and fall asleep again. So if I get up at 9 o'clock in the morning, that's fine with me, because I did lose a few hours during the night as well. But the thing is that it really helps the adrenaline.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the reasons that I was able to get out of my 4 lows, because of the sympathetic dominance, right? So my potassium, instead of being in the 1 to 3, it went up to 4, then it went up to 6 to 8. Oh, wow. I thought that's like, but now, it's like stopping the machine to work. It's amazing, this body, how it operates, because our bodies just, at 3 o'clock in the morning, like the Chinese says, traditional Chinese medicine, if you wake up at a certain time, it has to do with one of your organs, right?
Yeah, I think that's lungs. So 11 to 1 is supposed to be liver, I believe.
Yeah, I thought it was 3 o'clock,
1.
but it could be. I think I have to look into my
So like
notes.
night shift people, their organs are not regenerating because they're up working in the middle of the night. I think they have higher chances of aging and having disease because they're not resting during that time. And years ago, because I've been dealing with adrenal things for 30 years, I read a book and multiple people that said if you sleep between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m., that's going to be the most healing for the adrenals. Well, for years I was working, so I couldn't do that. Now I work from home and I've set up my schedule that I can do that. And I have the same experience as you. If I go back to sleep, the dogs wake me up to feed them, but I go back to sleep. And when I get that sleep in that early morning, I'm telling you, the hour or 2 that I get after I feed the dogs is actually better than the 5 hours I got before I woke up.
Me too.
I notice a huge difference in how I feel. I wish that we can all kind of work a schedule that, we can be healthier. We have a major epidemic of people being burned out, and we're caught up in this whole type A working and just, businesses wanting to be the best. And it's just, people are not their best if they're coming in tired and burned out. So it's actually better to kind of shorten schedules and people work from home and give you their best than, getting the worst of people because they're a body that's in the office, at a certain time. Luckily, I've had bosses and jobs where I would kind of prove myself. And then I look at them and say, hey, I'm not a morning person. So I'm going to start coming in like an hour later, and I'm not going to take lunch, and I'll make it up. So it's going to be about what I'm doing instead of me being here. And they were okay with it, so I was able to adjust my schedule at most of my jobs. Some of them I couldn't. And those were the ones that I got the unhealthiest when I had to be in work early.
Oh yeah, it is sad that, that people, this punching the card at a certain time, it makes it, imagine the police officers too, because they there's no way in hell that they're able to work from home. So, I mean, there are some work and profession out there that makes it impossible, So, I mean, I'm thanking God every day that I'm able to do that. And I was always able to kind of work my schedule somehow, some way. But I mean, it's not for everybody, but everybody's got days off, Yeah. Everybody's got a weekend off, or if it's not a weekend, they got some days off. And those are the time that you need to regenerate. That's the time where you need to take care and stay in bed if you have to. Don't think, don't even think, even if it's nice and sunny out there and it's 90 degrees, pretend there's a snowstorm and you can't get out. This is what I do, I mean, I mean, even if it's really nice when nice and sunny and it's like you want to go for the walk, but you're tired, but you're pushing yourself. But with everything we've learned, we know that when we push ourselves, we're also pushing the nervous system.
Yes.
And we're bringing the potassium way down
and the sodium up.
That's right.
That's a stress. And, what's really great, I think, knowing about hair mineral analysis and seeing hundreds of charts of people and their symptoms and our own experience, like, I was in stress for a few years and my sodium to potassium ratio was high. So I had inflammation, water retention. I was reactive and angry and very easily, annoyed. And now that I have no stress in my life and that's lowered, I just kind of walk around like, which is really, but I understand it now. Now I know that if I go walking every day, that's too much stress for me right now. So it's more important for me to sleep. And if I feel good, 1 or 2 days, maybe 3, walk, but don't walk as long and as fast as I was doing before. So you start to go, what is more important? More important is for me to feel good and to not be irritated, to be able to sleep and not have inflammation is way more important than me exercising.
Oh, yeah. And you know what? A very good point you're making, because what we're talking about, like even with the procedures, any kind of procedures that needs to be done, like if you're going to do coffee enemas, you're going to do saunas, and we shouldn't even make that a priority, because if you haven't rested, you have to rest. That's the number one priority, more so than doing coffee enemas, saunas, and everything else that comes along, even the diet, quite honestly.
Yeah.
Because if you're exhausted and you're really tired, like we're really not approachable at that point. We're not, we get angry easily, we get moody, we're like children, I mean, there's 2 things that has not changed in the adult, is that when we are hungry or moody is because we haven't had enough rest, I mean, children, when they cry, it's either they're hungry or they're tired. Well, that's pretty much us, We're the same way. So if, let's say, you're in a relationship and then you got somebody, you're with someone who kind of nags, if you haven't had any sleep and you haven't had enough sleep, that could really set it's like upside down for sure.
Yeah, I don't respond well to nagging if I'm not sleeping and I'm stressed out. You're probably going to get a really snotty Michelle. So.
Yeah. That's right. So, I mean, there's so many, lifestyle is everything, really. I mean, of course, it's about disciplining ourselves. And that's where it's not easy for many people. But, we got to start somewhere. These last 2 years that we've had, it's been a drag. It's not been fun. But many of us have learned new tools to survive. A lot of new tools that ended up to be positive as well. So while they want to do whatever they want to do with their great reset, whatever it is, we also have a great reset, and that great reset could be in the positive for us, while they may want to do something that may not be so positive towards us. But, a lot of people have benefited from this. It's not just those who haven't benefited from it. It's just not going with the matrix. Basically, don't get into the matrix is the biggest thing, not to get in.
Right. Then that's because people are waking up.
Right.
And, the thing is that a lot of people staying at home, a lot of people struggled, especially extroverts. I don't have that problem. I'm more of an introvert. Although when you meet me, I'm very outgoing. So people think I'm an extrovert, but quite honestly, I'd rather be alone. So, people like us, we adapted pretty well, but then the extroverts struggled. Well, some of those extroverts, they either unfortunately commit suicide and got into addiction, or a lot of them woke up, because they were sitting with themselves. You start to, when you become introspective and you're by yourself, you start to go, I don't like that job I was at. Like you start thinking about your life. And so that in many ways, it was actually a good thing that happened the last few years. And one of the other points I was going to get to with lifestyle and rest is it's really important to limit our time with people who are draining or a bad influence. You start to have a lot less friends and the healthier that you get, because quite frankly, most people are unhealthy and not dealing with their trauma. So if you're stressed and you're trying to relax and you're around somebody else, and then they're like, oh, let's have a glass of wine, you're more likely to say yes and do it, because you're not taking care of yourself, and this you're going to be easily influenced. So I found that I limit my time around people that are draining or that are not helping me with being a better person, and they're trying to influence me to pull me on their side.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Michelle. That is so true, because the more you grow and the more we find out the truth, and the less we want to be around people. It's not that we don't it's not like I don't like people, but I get drained very easily. It doesn't take much for me to be drained. But if it's with people that are like-minded, they're giving me energy. But the other way around, it's like your energy gets sucked in. It's like they're taking, not sucked in, sucked out, they're taking the little energy you might have. It's like it doesn't take long to be drained. So that is so important, to really pick the people you're going to be around. And, also being around people who are honest with you as well. When you do things that are not always right, to also let them know, be gentle, but let them know. And if it doesn't always come out the way you want it, I mean, it's okay, because it's okay amongst each other to be critical, because there is such a thing as positive, to be positive in that critic.
Well, you love
moment.
people. And if it's coming from a place of love, I've always been the point that I was upfront and honest with people, because but then I would see, it's really interesting, like say there's a circle of friends and I was more open about my opinions. And so I would be like outcast it. But meanwhile, all these other people, like say some person didn't like me because I was too honest, all these other people would actually say horrible things about that person behind their back. And yet they're all friends. And I'm like, well, that's kind of weird, like, meanwhile, they say horrible things about the person and then they're acting really friendly in front of them. So these superficial relationships are almost like addictive. Like people are just kind of in these relationships and they're not being honest with each other. And it's very superficial.
Very toxic, isn't it?
Yeah, it's very toxic.
That's exactly those toxic relationships that people maintain. They get together, but then they turn around and they talk about each other in a very negative way. And this is not good. I mean, and there are a lot like that, So it's not the quantity, it's the quality.
Quality
that is important. And it's like that with everything, right? Quality of life, the quality of food you eat. And it's not the quantity, but what you eat is important, right? It's the same with the water that we drink and stuff. So you're absolutely right. I mean, we know what that's like. We were brought up in these kind of,
and we were like that too. And
exactly.
I want to be very honest here, and I don't want to. This is not like coming from a place of judgment. It's coming from a place of just, we all shift and we go through different things. There's times that I was the toxic person, and people had to not be friends with me, and that's okay. Like that's okay.
Yeah.
And we have times like that. Now there's some people that we can ride out the waves through our friendships. It's like when you're struggling, they're strong. And then when they're struggling, you're strong. And you can kind of go through the friendship for years, and because you have that balance. But there's times that, maybe you're just too toxic in somebody's life and they're too fragile and they can't handle it. And so they walk away, and vice versa. So it's all what is going to help you be healthier and happier. Do what you need to do,
That's it.
Yeah, I don't want people to feel like shamed or anything like that. This is just a process. But if you're on a self-healing process, it is important to limit time with people that are going to be draining.
Oh, yeah. And, of course, because shame is really not something like I said before, there is some healthy shame on certain things, but not on these on this issue that we're just talking about
because
right
we're all
now.
the same. We're all
exactly.
equal. We're just kind of going through life.
That's right.
And so, that's
and
all.
they're learned patterns, right? We did take that on from our parents. They took it on from, it's generational. So it's like you decide at one point to cut it off and say, no, I'm not going to do that anymore. It's like with food, right? We come from an Italian background. They have the pizza and they got the pasta and they have the polenta, whatever else. But we decided that, hey, that is not good for us. Maybe if we'd be less stressed, maybe if we live in Italy. But, I'm sure they got their problems too, health-wise there, because they got the biggest celiac problem there with their gut, right? So it's like they eat a lot of gluten-free pasta. So, I mean, that would be me. And but the truth is we do have learned patterns, and these are the patterns that we have to learn to it's like indoctrination, actually. And we've been brainwashed, and we're trying to clean ourselves, the brain, everything else, to stop doing certain behaviors that is really not healthy for us, physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
Exactly. So I just kind of go through a couple more things. It's good to have a good creative outlet, something that pulls, especially people who are in sympathetic dominant or in some kind of fatigue. They probably work too much or too hard, and they're very much caught up in their head, thinking too much. So to try and find something that you're not thinking and that's more creative. I know we'd like to keep these videos really short. I'm going to go into one, and then this is going to be really weird. I have to let my dog out. But the next one is spirituality and faith-based belief. And I'll let Josephine talk about that.
Well, the one thing, here we go. We have very important, we talked about the rest. That is very important. And where do we find rest at the most is when we let go. Okay, we need to let go, whether it's material stuff or unmaterial things. We need to learn to let go. We come from a time where modern medicine has taken over, right? They've never, at the beginning, Aristotle believed in the body and the soul. Now we don't believe, now medicine doesn't believe in that. Now we are being used as experiment because only the body matters and the soul doesn't matter. But we need to reconnect to that. That is the most important thing for all of us to do, because if you don't connect to, if you only connect to the body, then you become a machine. I mean, losing weight is one thing. It's okay to maybe looking after your Hashimoto, but you have to go deep. You need to start digging and asking yourself why you have these disease and these symptoms. And many times it has to do, if we have to listen to what's going on. And a lot of times it's about our fears, it's emotions that we're not expressing, it's coming from our traumas from the past. And, if we don't deal with these emotions, if we do not deal with our past, eventually it's going to come out.
It becomes a disease on the inside. They've even done some research with people with cancer is a internal anger. And not in resentment and not dealing with stuff. I have a very interesting book. I don't even know if I've shared this with you, Josephine. It's called The Keys to Self-Liberation.
Oh, yes.
And I could look up anything in here. I don't know, this lady must have had some kind of like spiritual thing. And you can look up anything, and she talks about how it's connected to our thoughts and beliefs and some negative things that we feel about ourselves, like the throat. If we're having thyroid problems, are we expressing ourselves? Each of the different organs, even traditional Chinese medicine talks about that the liver is anger, the gallbladder is also anger, the kidneys are fear, and it's interesting, very interesting.
Oh, absolutely. And they're all connected. The more angry you get, the worse the liver gets. It's a double whammy, right? The liver, and then the liver gets more toxic, you get more angry. So that's why the Chinese doctors, Chinese traditional doctors, what they wanted, they do, and they did. I don't know how they are today, but the ones that I visited, they rather always deal with the organ. And then once the organ is better and it's healing, it's on its way, the anger starts to go away as well.
Away, yeah.
Right. You know, so it's like, but like we said, it's work. Nothing comes easy. We can't pretend, you and I, we know it's anything worthwhile takes work, anything.
And, and over time, you just get a little bit better, it's a process. I think in my early 20s, I started drinking water and stopped drinking soda. Then, in my 30s, I started eating organic food, it was just over time. And then now it's like nothing to eat healthy and not drink alcohol and stay at home and be at peace. I was a party girl. I was out and partying in Hollywood till 4:00 in the morning on the weekends. And now I'm just hanging out, stretching and playing with my dogs and watching TV and going to bed early.
Yeah, that's a change. I mean, talk about a 900-degree change here. Huh?
And I wasn't happy back then. Like, I looked happy, I think, but at the end of the day, my thoughts were, I didn't want to be with my thoughts. I would go to sleep. I would be up till 1 o'clock in the morning, and I would go to sleep with the TV on because I needed that noise to cancel out the noise in my head.
Oh yeah, I can see.
The thinking of stuff. And now I don't like noise. It's weird. Now I don't like any noise. Sometimes I don't even like the radio loud. So
there's hope for people. You see, that's basically what it is. It's when we start looking after ourselves in a better way, and then we want to look after other people too, because we're happier. We're not as grumpy as we were. We become more charitable towards others as well. I mean, the positive goes on and on and on. I mean, there's no question, right? I mean, so we're pretty blessed, I must say. And time is probably almost up. Is there anything else we need to talk about?
No, I think that's it. But, if you have any questions or comments, please leave the comments and give us a like and let us know what you want us to discuss next time. We have so many things that we can get into about, hair patterns and why certain people can't have sugar and other people can handle a little bit more carbohydrates in their diet. I mean, getting a hair test is probably one of the best things that anybody can get, just to see where you're at with those things, with oxidation, how you're handling carbs, where your thyroid's at, where your adrenals are at, your sodium to potassium. People are taking zinc because of COVID and they're hearing that zinc is good to take. Yes, it is. But if your sodium to potassium ratio is low, that is not good. It'll crash you. And it also, too much zinc or somebody who's highly copper toxic could initiate a copper dump, which could make somebody feel crazy. So it's really important to not, do things because you're hearing some people talk about how it's good for you, but to find out where your body chemistry is at.
Oh, yes, because and really a hair mineral analysis is really the most accurate test. Better than a blood test. It really is better than the saliva tests, which are very expensive, like with functional FDN, functional diagnostic nutrition, where people go. It has its place if you don't mind spending thousands of dollars to basically end up learning exactly what you would learn with a hair mineral analysis.
If not more, I think.
Exactly.
Because I've had all kinds of tests and I learned more from a hair test than anything else. And blood work is just the biggest joke ever because, until you reached a point of like no return disease, it's not going to show up in your blood work. So you go to how many people go to the doctors, they're tired, they can't sleep, they feel horrible. And the doctor comes and goes, oh, your blood work is great.
Yeah,
No,
because they
yeah.
had it done at a time during the day that it was great at that moment. But if we would go back, it's just like these tests that they were giving for the C19. I don't want to say that word there, but whatever. It's like they're not accurate. Same kind of thing with the hair. You get to find out your blueprint. You get to find out also the trend. If you're not a diabetic, it can tell you that you're going
beforehand. Yeah,
That's
you
right.
can find out beforehand. And I actually sent my hair to 2 different labs a week apart, and there was only minor differences in them. They're both labs that don't wash the hair. So it's pretty accurate because
Yes,
both labs reported basically almost the same thing. It was a week apart, but it was the same patterns.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so maybe just a little bit of twitches there.
Just
and here. That's right.
Yeah, numbers, but all the patterns were the same on the hair test. So
Yeah,
they're very accurate. It's been a great tool for me to learn what negatively affects my life and what has helped my life, so that I can keep doing more of what, I look back at all my hair tests and go, oh, during this time was summer, I was sleeping in, I was getting sunshine, like I could see that I was doing better during that time. And then this other time I was in stress, and that's how my body responded. So I can see, what is affecting me in a good or bad way.
yeah, absolutely. So now don't forget to subscribe. A thumbs up would be wonderful. And,
Share the video.
That's
Comment.
right. Share the video to everybody and remind them to subscribe and to give a thumbs up. And
And
we're
let us
sharing
know
a
for
lot
next
of good
week.
stuff here.
Yeah, let us know for next week if you have anything before we decide what we're going to discuss. If you have any comments that you'd like to see us, bring up, then let us know.
Okay, so we'll see you next week, Michelle.
Bye.
Bye.